That's good? Can you hear me? It feels all right. So we're talking about mind games tonight. And my daughter, who is six years old, just turned 6, she's just started figuring this mind game thing out. So like, I'll tell her to do something and like tidy her room or whatever, and she'll just look at me and then just roll her eyes and then humph and walk off and do it. And it's really annoying as a dad because she's actually gone and done the thing that she's meant to do, but she's playing this little mind game with me, like, Dad, I'm not happy with you, and I'm going to do this little thing that's not going to get me in trouble with you. It's a little mind game, and I know it's driving you nuts. And the really annoying thing is that I'm like, it's really hard to tell off a kid for rolling their eyes because it's just the lamest little thing. And maybe there's a bit of it's my problem because I'm letting her play these mind games, but I'm really concerned about this little girl because she's showing disrespect to me, and in the future, like, if she doesn't learn respect, then she's going to get in all kinds of different trouble. And so me as a dad, I'm like, don't play these mind games. And then there's my son, Elijah, he's 3.5, and his mind games are a whole lot more blatant. Like, we'll be like after church here, and he's like running away across the car park, and then he turns around just waiting for me to run after him, and this is his little mind game just to try and get me to come for him. And like, I'm just thinking, I don't want you to get to the car park, Elijah, because there might be a car that comes to hit you. I'm like, stop, just stop. And he's like, mind games, mind games. And I just want to cut out the mind games to help my kids give up these mind games because it's just getting them into trouble, right? Does that all make sense? I mean, it's kind of weird because you guys would never roll your eyes at your parents, right, or anything like that. But just try and imagine what she would have done. We're going to look at the Bible. We're going to look at like 2 whole pages of the Bible tonight. We're going to smash through them. 848 if you want to look. So Jesus last week on earth, and he spends it seems like a whole day, one of his whole days of his last week on earth, trying to get people to give up on mind games. He goes into the temple, and while he's in there, there's 3 different groups of people come to him, and they're playing these little mind games with him. So the first one is verse 27, Mark 11:27. And they came again to Jerusalem, and as he was walking in the temple, the chief priests and the scribes and the elders came to him. And they said to him, by what authority are you doing these things? He just shut down the temple the day before. You remember that? Shut down the temple. This is the place that they worked. And they're like, what are you doing? Who told you could do that? Where's your authority? So this is mind game number 1, if we can have that. Mind game number 1 is not taking Jesus seriously. And that's what these guys are doing. They're like, who gave you this authority? And now Jesus, like, he hasn't been like private and hiding where his authority comes from. He's been saying it over and over again. And they've seen it. He knows they've seen it. And it's this mind game they're playing with him. And so he comes back at them with a question. And he says, well, I'll ask you a question. Answer me and I'll tell you by what authority I do these things. Was the baptism of John, so John the Baptist, was what he was doing, was that from heaven or was that from men? And he's got them there because they're like, if we say, and like John the Baptist was this guy that all these people came to him, and he wasn't working amongst the chief priests. He was out there in the desert and telling all these people to come to Jesus. He was doing amazing things. And they're like, if we say he's from God and we didn't ever go out in the desert, then Jesus has got us. But if we say he wasn't from God, then all of those people who went out in the desert, they're going to get us. And so they're like, we don't know. They're playing a mind game with him. They're not being honest with him. They're not taking Jesus seriously. And here's what's the problem with that. Well, Jesus says, well, if you're not going to tell me, I'm not going to tell you. He's like, if that's the way you're playing this mind game, then you're lost to me, which is pretty scary. This mind game number 1 is one that we do as well, not taking Jesus seriously. It's like we're saying, I know all this stuff about Jesus, what he's done, who he is, how powerful he is and everything. but somehow I'm not going to take that seriously. I'm just holding it at a distance. I wouldn't admit it to his face that he is the one with all the authority, because if I do that, if I let myself admit that I know this, then I've got to change everything. These chief priests, they would have had to change everything. But it's the same for us. We know this stuff, but we hold back. We play these mind games with Jesus because we know otherwise we're just going to have to, it's going to change our whole lives, and it might hurt. So that's mind game number one, not taking him seriously. Mind game number two is a different group of people, and they come at him, they're keeping these double standards. The double standard is basically like having a massive bowl of ice cream and giving your brother a tiny bowl of ice cream. So looking out for yourself and having standards for yourself and then different standards for other people. And so there's this group of people called the Pharisees and some Herodians, and they come, and it actually says they come to trap him in his talk. So this is chapter 12, verse 13. They're actually, it says here, they're coming at him with a mind game. They're trying to trap Jesus. And they say to him, "Teacher, we know that you are true and don't care about anyone's opinion." Basically, Jesus, you don't play mind games. "For you're not swayed by appearances, but truly teach the way of God. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Should we pay them or should we not?" So they're saying Caesar, so he was the Roman emperor that kind of had control of the whole country, and they hated him, but they had to pay taxes to him, and they hated it. So they're like, let's ask Jesus, and now we've got him trapped. Because if he says pay taxes to Caesar, that means all the people are going to hate Jesus. But if he says don't pay taxes to Caesar, that means we can go and dob him into the Romans. Jesus is dead, we're all set. Do you get what they're doing? Playing this mind game. And it's all about keeping double standards. Because when it boils down to it, they came to Jesus and said that you don't have double standards, that you're honest, but they're almost admitting it themselves. And Jesus pinpoints it. He says, "Well, give me a coin." And so they bring a coin to him, and he says, "Whose face is on this coin?" And they say, "Caesar's face is on the coin." All the coins of the Roman Empire had Caesar on it, because Caesar wants everyone to know that he is a boss. And so Jesus says to him, whatever belongs to Caesar, give to Caesar. Whatever belongs to God, give to God. And you're like, that's genius, right? He was in this trap, and he's just ducked out of the trap. The mind game didn't work on him. And that's true. It was a brilliant answer. But what he said is really, really profound. Because this mind game, keeping a double standard, is something that we do as well. That we operate like those Pharisees, just paying off a little here so that we can get away with a lot over here. Like, Jesus, I'm going to give you my Sundays. I'll give you my Friday nights. But I'm going to say what I do with the rest of the week. I'll give you that bit. I'll pay my coin. I'll pay my little tax. Do you get where I'm going with this? Or like, Jesus, I'll obey you on a few things that I've really got nailed. But there's some other things that I really want to hold on to for myself. But just be happy with those things. Double standards going on here. That when people are around, I'm going to watch the right things. I'm going to be careful about what I expose myself to. But when no one's around, it's open slather. Because we feel like we've paid this little tax to Jesus by being good in one spot. And then we're just opening ourselves up to a whole lot of other danger. And the thing with Jesus is he's not playing mind games. He's like, what he said wasn't just a brilliant answer, it was really profound. Because he said, what belongs to God, give to God. And he sees his people and he's like, you belong to God. Don't hold yourself back from him. Give yourself to him. And he's saying the same thing to us. Like just giving Jesus a little bit of your life, it's just a mind game. And it keeps us in trouble through the whole rest of the week, through the whole rest of our lives. He's saying, don't keep those double standards. He's saying, give it all over. So that's the second mind game. The third mind game, this is the last one. There's a group called the Sadducees. The Sadducees were a religious group who believed that there wasn't a resurrection. And they come to Jesus with this really weird story. So there's this woman who marries a man, and before they can have any kids, the man dies. So sad start to the story. But then the woman marries the man's brother, which sounds kind of weird to us, but back in the day, that's what they did so that she could have kids and they could keep the family name. So it's kind of like, well, this could be a happy ending, but then he dies. So she marries the next brother, and he dies. Until she's married all 7 brothers in this family. And they've all died, and there's no kids. And then she dies, and they say, at the resurrection, when they're all brought back to life again in heaven, who is she married to? And this is their little mind game. And the mind game is not taking Jesus at his word. Because they didn't believe there was a resurrection. So they've cooked up this ridiculous story, a really sad story for that woman, if you think about it. And they're trying to like pinpoint this thing and say, Jesus, there's got to be a hole in your argument here. And this is what Jesus says to them. In verse 24, Jesus said to them, is this not the reason you're wrong? Because you know neither the scriptures nor the power of God. He's saying, the reason you're wrong is because you don't, number one, know what the Bible says, and you don't appreciate the power of God, that you're not taking me at my word. And that's something that we do as well. Like these guys, they didn't believe in a resurrection, so whenever that came up in the Bible, they would explain their way around it with these wacky stories like that. And the thing is, that's a mind game that we play when we come to the Bible. Because there's some awesome verses in the Bible. Like, don't be anxious about anything, but in everything with prayer and petition, make your requests known to God. And then the peace that passes all understanding will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. So whenever you're stressed out, you look at that verse, it's like, sweet, I got that. I'm going to pray to God, he's going to look after everything. And he does, and that's a good one. Or love your neighbor, because that's a really nice one. Or don't judge others, because that's a really good one, a really handy one sometimes. Or, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. These are really good verses, right? We love those verses because they're so good for us. But then there's other verses that we like to leave behind. Stuff like Jesus said, take up your cross and follow me. He said, love your enemy. He said, gouge out your eye if it's causing you to sin. And so like these Sadducees, we're not taking him at his word. He says, it's all good for you. And we're like, we'll take the good bits, we'll leave out the bad bits. And we're just playing this mind game with him. And he's saying, it's just going to hurt you. You're missing out on all the goodness I've got here for you in my word. So 3 different groups, and they're all playing mind games. And the scary thing is that they're mind games that all of us play. That we don't take Jesus seriously. That we keep these double standards with him. That we don't take him at his word. But then here's the amazing thing. Is right near the end of the chapter. He's had all these different groups of people come to him and ask him all these questions. And here he is in the temple. And then there's one person, doesn't even come to him, but just right up the back in the corner. There's this widow. And she comes in and she goes up to the offering box and she drops in 2 little coins. All these people coming at Jesus with his mind games, and he notices this woman way back there. And this is what he says about her. Truly, I say to you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the offering box. For they all contributed out of their abundance. They put in their little tax and hold back all the stuff that they want to keep for themselves. But she, out of her poverty, has put in everything she had, all she had to live on. This woman is saying, no more mind games anymore. No more mind games. She's like, it's all in for Jesus. I'm giving up on the games. I'm holding nothing back. I'm just giving everything over to God. And that was the bit he noticed. And I was thinking about that this week. Like, that is challenging enough in itself, right? Hopefully that's got you thinking about some stuff. But then I thought of all these people playing mind games. Just thought, imagine if that one guy that they're all approaching, Jesus, imagine if he was playing a mind game. Imagine if all the stuff he said, all the stuff that he was promising, all the stuff that he was doing was just some mind game. Just a cruel trick to suck us in. Is that scary, that thought? Like that terrifies me to even consider that. But the awesome thing is that that's not the case. They even said it themselves. You don't play mind games, Jesus. And he doesn't. And I'm so glad he doesn't, because we will be stuffed if he does. Jesus doesn't play mind games with us. We can trust him with everything. And that's what he wants for us, like me with my daughter, like me with my son. Just be safe, come back, trust me. Don't play these mind games. You're just putting yourself in danger. And so that's what I want us to really think about tonight. I'm going to invite the youth band back up again. We're going to sing one last song. And I want you to think about those different mind games and not taking Jesus seriously. You know everything about him. But for some reason, you're too scared to say, you are boss. You have all the authority, Jesus, because you're scared about how it's going to have to cause you to change. Or you're keeping these double standards. You give him a little bit, but you're holding back all of this other stuff. And you know it's pulling you two different ways. You know it's a mind game, and you know he's calling you to stop it. Or that you're happy to take some bits of the promises of what he says, but not all of it. And Jesus is saying, it's like, those mind games, they're just killing you.